Welcome back, everybody, to the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County. I am your host, the infamous ex-chief of the city of East Cleveland, and I'm talking about Ohio here, just so everybody knows. Listen, we got some music that was actually given to us by Backbeats and Guitars, and it's about 2 minutes long. I'm going to let it play. If you don't want to listen to the music, this is going to be the official intro song to the show. If you don't want to listen to it, skip ahead to about 2 minutes. Again, welcome back, everybody. And again, thank you. Big shout out to Backbeats and Guitars for the intro music. Phenomenal, awesome, grunge, something I like personally. I wanted to share with you guys, and I never expected this show to be growing as fast as it is. And I just wanted to show you some analytics here. So that I think, again, this is episode 5, and we have 710 family subscribers, and I consider you all family, with 7.6 thousand views. Apparently, a lot of you like my shorts here. There's a lot of that was the I'm trying to remember what my shirt was. Oh, it was Spot the Violation, and you guys took off with that. A lot of comments guessing on that. That's awesome. Far more exceeding anything that I possibly could have had. And again, I think this is this is showing the last 28 days. I don't know if I don't know how long the show's actually been up. But so again, 5th episode. Our stats are awesome, and I can't thank anybody enough for that. So we do have a good show for you here. We hopefully are going to have some guest coming on here. One guest, and I should say singular. And he should be coming in with us. He's actually from the West Coast. So right now I'm filming in the morning. So I'm going to be jumping on with him later on here. So I think that's about it for this segment. I did get some... I got some specific requests, which I'm hopefully going to be able to fill. There were some requests about us looking into the Frank Tyson shooting, doing some sort of analysis on that. I have to admit, I'm a little reluctant in some ways because this is I want this to be a positive police channel, but I also have to be objective. And hopefully when we talk to the guest here from the West Coast, we're we're able to give you something that is objective. Also, we'll be looking a little bit at the Ryan Westlake officer involved shooting in Akron. City of Akron actually dumped a huge amount of public information right off the rip for anybody in the news industry, which the Fourth Estate of Northeast Ohio, which I'm sure that they did an outstanding job of ignoring pretty much everything and jumped right to the discipline, which we talked about in previous podcasts, how the media just loves to portray. They love to pick up the little nuances of someone's personnel file. And again, they're not judging for the actual shooting itself, which that's what needs to happen. So anyways, we're going to jump off here. It's about 5:50. And I had some questions. People were asking, well, Scott, why are you taking these breaks? And I'm going to tell you. So I don't have a producer yet. All right. So in order for me to set up the screen and everything, it takes some effort on my part. And a lot of times when I'm working on the computer or doing something else, I'm losing concentration of what I'm trying to actually say. And so I found it very, very much easier to basically pause the recording for myself, taking a break. And that way I can set up for the next segment. So that was some of the questions that I had been asked, why I'm taking breaks. And hopefully at some point I can get some monetization, help pay back for all those those tax fines that I owe. I need some help with that. But anyways, hopefully when we come back, I'm not sure if I'm bringing the West Coast guest on first, or I might do a slight introduction of him because he actually has quite a bit of history himself that I think I probably want to portray for the audience, just so everybody gets to be as comfortable with him as I am. So anyways, with that, I'm going to try to do my drum music out. And we'll see you guys. I mean, you're going to be here the whole time, it's just spliced together. Post-production, which I'm learning about. Post-production, So you'll actually be there, but it'll actually be space and time for me. I'll catch you on the next break. Thanks. All right, welcome back, everybody. Coming back from our break. And I wanted to introduce, or give a little introduction of our guest who's on the West Coast, as I was describing. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know exactly, he's jet setting all over the place. I don't know exactly where he lays his head at night. But he is a retired police officer from one of the best law enforcement agencies that I have ever seen, and that's the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'll let him describe, or I'll tell you about the specifics. I think he just retired not too long ago. He's been featured on the TV show Cops. And he himself was actually involved in an officer-involved shooting. And I actually wasn't even going to bring it up in the show. He graciously offered to bring it up. So I'm going to let him decide how much he actually wants to bring it up. And this is what I've been talking about with producing. So I'm taking applications for volunteers paying $0. I'm going to help produce this with me while I'm recording. I'm trying to find my share button. I'm assuming I have to wait until my intro is finished here. Which apparently that is. All right, so we're going to try to get to the screen here. If I can find it. All right, so here we have Ron Thoma. And I actually took this off of his Facebook. And he actually does not have very many pictures as far as law enforcement related on his Facebook. So that's why I had to definitely grab this from him. And that's next to his trusted cruiser. And I actually had an opportunity to ride out with Ron on one of my trips out to Vegas, and did a ride along with him, and it was actually pretty awesome. And the pure amount of territory that each officer covers is mind-boggling. If I recall correctly, they basically segmented all of Las Vegas Metro into 4 sections. And I'll try to come back to make certain that when I'm talking with Ron that this is accurate. But I think they were divided like, northwest, maybe 5 sections: northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, and I think they had central for the actual where the casinos are. And essentially, each officer is assigned one of those sectors. And of course, they had a bunch of supplemental units. They even had a helicopter that I got to see on. There was a pursuit, not ours, but another officer's in some sort of pursuit out there. And I think it was a robbery or burglary suspect, as a matter of fact. And their helicopter got up, which was pretty awesome. They also had a K9 unit, I think, that was central, that went all over the place. But they literally had CSI. The real. I'm not talking about the show. All right, the real people working CSI actually came out. One of the first calls that I recall going on with him was a break-in of like a mini mart, and it might have actually been a robbery. I can't remember. It's been a while, and we're sitting there for a while, and I'm just sort of wondering what's going on. First, a cadet, I think it was called a police cadet, rolls up, and so I'm asking Ron, what's up with this? And apparently they. At the time, I don't know if they still are, but they would hire someone that was 18 before they could actually be a full certified officer. They would hire somebody from like 18 to 21, and they were referred to as cadets, and they took reports. So basically, once the officer got to the scene, settled everything down, made certain everything was fine, a cadet would roll in and basically take the report, which I thought was pretty exceptional. And then again, I actually saw CSI roll in, which I thought was pretty awesome. And they actually were processing the scene. I also do recall I think we went on a domestic violence call, and it was astounding to me because, again, this technology at this point was very early, and he was able to do like reporting and stuff in his car on his MDT. What's called an MDT, mobile data terminal. And he was able to actually do most of his work via his car. But while we were there, we were just sort of idling around, and just curiously, again, I'm wondering what exactly we're doing. We've already handcuffed the suspect, and Ron's like, we're waiting for a paddy wagon, and sure enough, a paddy wagon showed up. So to basically transport the suspect to the jail. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I mean, I understand that, the officer's extremely busy. They have a huge amount of territory to cover. But they also obviously have a lot of supplemental, which is awesome. So on the screen, you have episode 14. My friend Ron Thoma was in this Cops episode, Family Feuds Special Edition. I don't think this was the domestic that I was involved in, but could be. I don't know. I don't think I remember any film crew rolling around. So anyways, as I stated, Ron was involved in an officer-involved shooting. And so I wanted to bring up the press release relative to that. And this is back in 2013, obviously December 16th, 2013. And this is the assistant sheriff. It's a little confusing for us people in Ohio. So they're a police department, but they're sheriff and assistant sheriffs. I don't know. I'm confused. But apparently I think this is one of the people that work right underneath the guy in charge of the police department. But he's going to give a press release, essentially, of the shooting.
You don't know, I'm Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo. I'm here to talk about the officer-involved shooting that occurred on December 16th. The incident started as a call of a suicide attempt at 3217 East University Drive. This is obviously the follow-up press conference we normally give following the initial information released at the scene. The suspect has been identified as 39-year-old Jose Luis Barrios Aguilar, and I can spell that for you if you need it. It's Barrios-Aguilar. The suspect weapon was a Mossberg Model 88 12-gauge shotgun. The officers involved in this use of force is Officer Todd Fasulo. He's a 3.5-year officer assigned to. I got to make sure I say Officer Todd Fasulo Jr., a 3.5-year veteran assigned to patrol in the Southeast Area Command, along with Officer Ronald Thoma, a 13-year veteran assigned to the patrol in the Southeast Area Command also. On December 16th of 2013, at approximately 9:37 p.m., the LVMPD 911 Center received a phone call from Richard Stima, who lives at 3217 East University. Stima said his roommate, Jose Barrios, was threatening suicide by injecting himself with dog insulin, and that he was currently injecting himself as Stima was talking to the dispatcher. Stima said there was a shotgun upstairs, but he didn't think Aguilar would go after it. Stima also described Aguilar as wearing a green shirt and black pants. After receiving the 911 call, officers and medical personnel were dispatched. Officer Thoma and his sergeant arrived and met with Stima at the front of the residence. Stima informed officers that Aguilar was in the house. He was distraught and he had injected himself with what he described as poison. Stima also told the officers there was a shotgun in the house, but didn't believe Aguilar had access to the weapon. Upon finding out there was no phone number to the residence which to contact Aguilar, officers approached the house to make verbal contact with him. We had learned at a later time that Stima had called with his personal phone and he had it outside of the residence. Subsequently, that's the reason why we couldn't get a hold of him inside the house. Officers called out to Aguilar numerous times over several minutes through the open front door, saying they were there to help him. Eventually, officers heard Aguilar moving around on the second floor. The officers then moved to a vantage point just inside the front door, which allowed them to see up in the stairway area. At this point, officers observed Aguilar descending the stairs, holding a 12-gauge shotgun pointed in their directions. Officers immediately retreated from inside the resident front door area and positioned them to cover around the inner perimeter of the residence. Patrol sergeant at the scene immediately began to make notifications over his radio, indicating he had an armed subject inside the residence. The patrol sergeant assigned several officers to act as an arrest team should Aguilar exit a residence and surrender. All arriving officers were placed around the inner perimeter of the house to limit Aguilar's ability to escape. Aguilar came out the front door of his residence holding a dark-colored shotgun. The officers began to order Aguilar to drop his weapon and get on the ground. Aguilar did not immediately comply. Aguilar was again ordered to drop his weapon. At this time, he did comply by putting the shotgun on the driveway and lying down next to it. When Aguilar went to the ground, the rest team moved into the front yard next door in preparation to take Aguilar into custody. Officers Fasulo and Thoma were part of the rest team. The officers ordered Aguilar to crawl away from the shotgun, which he did slowly. As Aguilar was crawling, he suddenly leapt up and reached for the shotgun. As Aguilar grabbed the shotgun, officers Fasulo and Thoma fired their weapons, striking him in the leg. Aguilar fell to the ground, and officers immediately moved forward to take him into custody. As officers got in the vicinity of Aguilar, approximately 15 feet, he again jumped to his feet. Officers quickly tackled, subdued, and restrained Aguilar. Medical assistance was rendered, and Aguilar was transported to Sunrise Hospital. Aguilar remains at Sunrise Hospital, where he's being treated for his injuries. He has been booked in absentia at the Clark County Detention Center on charges of 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer and 1 count of resisting a public officer with a weapon, that being the firearm. We are now conducting our critical incident review of this OIS. followed by the district attorney, who will also review the case. We will have to wait until the process is complete to have a full understanding of everything that occurred. It would not be fair for me to speculate today about specifics, but I do have confidence in our review process that includes our daily force and tactical review.
So, obviously, the officer involved shooting investigation cleared everyone from the Las Vegas Metro. I mean, just from what you heard from the description that the assistant sheriff was giving, I mean, it was a circumstance, again, that nobody could have predicted or nobody would have been able to stop. And this, again, I mentioned it prior episodes, police officers do not go out on a daily basis, or I say daily basis. They go out on a daily basis, but they're not ever going out attempting to get into some sort of confrontation with a citizen. It doesn't happen. Again, as I explained before, my saying used to be, I get paid the same amount of money whether I'm drinking coffee all day long or if I'm fighting with you. And officers, again, just are not looking for that. I'm sure maybe there's some really small percentage, who knows, but the majority of officers I have ever worked with in Northeast Ohio, talking with them on the West Coast, East Coast, North Coast, South Coast, okay, every officer, they're just looking to do their job and go home to their family. So, with that being said, I do remember when Ron got into this officer involved shooting right afterwards. Was a pretty dark time for him. This is not something he wanted to do. It affected him. I'll hopefully let him tell it better, but it affected him very much. So hopefully we're going to be bringing him on. I don't know how much he wants to discuss this relative to this, but I wanted to give you guys a little prequel, a little background on who he is, because I'm hoping to make him a common guest on the show, especially with hot topics that are coming up, because most people in this area, honestly, are afraid to talk because of the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. So hopefully he can come on and shed some light on some of the episodes or some of the incidents, is what I'm looking for. The incidents that are taking place in Northeast Ohio. And again, I'm not going to be just covering Northeast Ohio, but I'm going to try to concentrate on it because I don't think that it's being actually portrayed or investigated very well by the Fourth Estate of Northeast Ohio. So with that, we are at 15 minutes, which is the longest non-break that I've taken. So we're going to jump into a break. And again, thanks to Pros Production, you'll be with me immediately, and I'll have the benefit of taking a break and setting some things up for the next segment. And I did get some comments from a certain Bradnell officer that he felt my times were too short. 30 minutes wasn't enough. I'm still gauging this. I try to make it convenient for people on the way to work to listen to it, because we're also on a podcast. You're watching on YouTube, but there's also a podcast going on off of this recording, and so I've been trying to limit it to 30 minutes, thinking that that's the average time for people going to work, or if you have a 15-minute ride and a 15-minute ride home, that 30 minutes is good enough, but maybe it's not. But anyways, we will catch you guys after the break. So, we're back from the break with Ron Thoma, the guy that I gave the introduction about. Basically, Ron, just summarizing, because I know that you're jet setting all over the U.S. in your retired years, and
it's nice.
I basically gave a short synopsis. I played the actual public press. I think your assistant deputy or assistant sheriff, and that's something you're going to have to explain to me because I don't understand. Maybe you're originally from Ohio, so maybe you have a better understanding or can clarify. The Metro Vegas Police Department is actually a police department, right? It's not a sheriff's department, correct?
Right.
Or am I incorrect?
So, like in 1973, the city police and the sheriff's department merged for basically financial reasons, and they just became Metro. And they decided to keep, instead of a chief of police, they wanted someone that was elected. So they decided to keep the sheriff as an elected position. And that's basically it. It's just, it's the same police departments. They basically took the best of both departments and merged them together. The guy that was talking during that press conference was Joe Lombardo. So he became the sheriff, and now he's the governor of Nevada.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
He's actually a pretty handsome guy. He was.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He's a really he's a cop's cop. He's definitely a nice guy. He's got your back as long as you're doing the right thing.
So he is essentially right underneath the sheriff, or what is the assistant sheriff?
Oh, okay. So back then he was the assistant sheriff. We have deputy chiefs, and then right above the deputy chief would be the assistant sheriff, and then you have the sheriff. So he's basically the number 2 in command.
Okay. And he basically just gave the outline of what happened. And again, I don't know if you want to get into that, but he basically was just talking about the officer-involved shooting. Obviously, it came out in a positive light. Everybody was cleared. So again, and then I also spoke briefly about I couldn't actually access it for whatever reason, but you were on the cop show, and I also talked about our ride along. I don't even know if you recall. At one point when I was out in Vegas, I went on a ride along with you, and I was actually amazed with the amount of territory that you guys were covering. You guys were in. Is it 4 zones or 5 zones?
Well, now it's 9 zones, but back when I remember that was a fun ride along. I think back then it was 5 zones, and now we're at 9 zones, and we cover all of Clark County. So that's the most populated area in Nevada. It's all of southern Nevada, basically. Outside of the test range, Area 51, that kind of thing. And it goes all the way to the Arizona border. And then there's other cities like Laughlin and things like that, which are still metro jurisdiction. But they have resident officers that get paid like an extra 20%, and they have to live there, and they basically patrol the little smaller towns.
I remember you actually took me up. I thought you were joking, honestly. You had said, "Hey, you want to go see snow?" Because I think it was like 80 or 90 at that point where we were, and you were like, "Hey, you want to go see snow?" And you took me on maybe a 20-minute drive, and sure enough, we're up in the mountains. And I think we ended up meeting one of the resident officers. He was like literally like on I don't know if it was a ski resort or I don't know what.
Yeah,
what was up on the top
Charleston,
of the mountain?
Mount Charleston. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy because you can go skiing and then drive, 40 minutes and then go swimming in Lake Mead. So it's really crazy. But it's a fun place to work. It's a great department.
I actually recognize that because even just the short time that I was on the ride along, you guys, I actually learned quite a bit. You would actually, I think my department at that point had MDTs, mobile data terminals, but you guys were like having fully functional ones where it was actually showing like locations of where the cars were back then, and you were actually able to type reports, which now we can do, but back then that was like totally new, foreign to me. I was like, wow, I can't believe you guys have this technology to do this.
Yeah, that was, I think, around 2004, 2003 is when you went on the ride along?
Yeah, that sounds about.
Yeah. They've always had that stuff in the car. The first ones that I had were just the ones where you would only get 4 pages of information, and then you had to delete or you would miss the messages. But yeah, now they have the laptops, and it's crazy now what they have.
I was also talking about the cadets. Is that still there? Where the younger people that are they technically certified officers or no?
No. So what it is the cadet program is they go through a background check, all that kind of stuff, the polygraph, and they go through like a mini academy that's maybe a month long. And when they turn 21, they redo the background check, but they're guaranteed a spot in the academy.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I do recall them like showing up, and I couldn't remember exactly what was happening. It was like I don't know. It was like a 7-Eleven type store here in Ohio. I don't know if you have 7-Elevens, but it was like a 7-Eleven store, and it had either been broken into or robbed, and this other car pulls up, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a cadet. They're gonna take the report. And I thought you were joking. I'm like, what? Okay.
No, it's really nice. They teach them to fingerprint so that we don't even have to do fingerprinting or call CSI out. So they teach them how to take all the reports and do the fingerprint. As long as there's no suspect contact, then we call them in, and they just do the reports, and it frees us up for the in-progress crimes and things like that.
And one thing I forgot to mention in your introduction is that you were in the Army, and I don't know if you're allowed to talk about. You got your Army hat there. I don't know. Are you allowed to talk about what you did in the Army? Your MOS, your military occupation?
Oh yeah. It was just an intel analyst, and then the last 2 years I was counterintelligence. Got retrained into that. Did a lot of fun stuff with that. Went to Central America, did some counter drug stuff, and just basically got to travel all over the world. So the good thing is that if you want a career in the police department, you get the veterans points. When you test for a police department or fire department, and that really put me ahead because I'm not a great test taker, but the veterans points are really what put me ahead, where I got pretty good score.
Awesome. Yeah. I didn't know they were still doing that or not, as far as the veterans points are.
Yeah.
I know that it was very competitive back then. I think they even had recruiters fly into Cleveland at one point. I believe I actually took the Metro test. I don't even remember when it was, but they actually had a recruiter fly into Cleveland. So you guys were extremely competitive back in the day.
Yeah, one of my friends is a recruiter, and that's all he does is he travels to Texas and just you name it, all over, just recruiting people, going to colleges, doing seminars, setting up tests for out-of-state applicants.
That's got to be a pretty gravy job.
Well, yeah, it is.
Now, when you actually retired, what was your function at that point? You were still on.
Well, the last 6 months.
Were you assigned anything, or?
Well, no, because the last 6 months I got hurt, so they had me kind of at dispatch, being a desk officer, which is basically, the dispatchers would get hard times from civilians and insist, oh, I want a police officer. So they'd connect them to me, and I would say, no, we're not coming out for that, and that type of thing. So that was a pretty easy job.
You said you were doing that for 4 months, or?
Yeah, about 6 months. 6 months, and then I retired.
I actually recall, so back in the day, and it happened several times in East Cleveland where there were layoffs, and the police in East Cleveland were civil service, where dispatchers technically weren't. So the dispatchers had been laid off, so officers then would have to go in and assume the role of dispatcher. And I can tell you, that was not a fun assignment. I have all sorts of respect for dispatchers. So.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do what they do. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way. One of my favorite jobs, though, was working at the Fusion Center. Did you guys have a Fusion Center?
Yes, it was actually ran. I think it's run by the Sheriff's Department and or Homeland Security, but we do have a Fusion Center
Yeah.
But it's like a regional fusion center for us.
Yeah, ours is the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center / Fusion Center. But yeah, that was a fun job. I did that for a year, and that was running the cameras on the strip and all that kind of stuff. So it's just amazing, those cameras, what they can do. You know, we worked together, obviously, with cameras for a while. But
yes.
Yeah, it puts those cameras to shame.
and those were actually pretty good tech. And just backing up, I mean, is it okay if I talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or big. Okay, so Ron and I actually met originally at doing loss prevention for Super Kmart, and I can't. You weren't in. I'm trying to remember. We were in Fairlawn, right, or were we in Medina?
Medina. Yeah.
Okay. Because I actually also worked at some point. I went on to Fairlawn, so I couldn't remember if it was Fairlawn or Medina that we were at. But but our camera system actually was pretty nice back in the day.
Oh, it was. Yeah, the Sensormatics. That was really nice. That was some fun times too.
Actually, it was. I don't know. Sometimes I think it was actually preferable to law enforcement. I don't know.
I've said that a few times. I've said that a few times. You know, because it was a fun job, and you know, you didn't take it too seriously, but it was still kind of serious. But yeah, it was, right. And the people were great. I loved everyone we worked with for the most part.
I remember part of our function. That was the only thing that would irritate us. Is I don't know if you remember once an hour.
The cooler walks.
Yes. Somebody would have to go around and look at the temperature for all of the meats, because supposedly there were hundreds of thousands of dollars if something went wrong, they would go spoiled. So we had to go check that. That was probably like the lead. And we had actually, if I recall, we actually had monitors.
Yeah,
too,
the alarms.
In the office.
Yeah.
We had like alarms, but we still had to go out and physically check it like once an hour also.
And then it ended up being like maybe once a day you would actually look at the temperature and you would just pencil whip it.
Yes. And then occasionally you were like, "Oh wow, it is low," and the alarm never went off.
Yeah,
but
fun times.
But are we able to? I don't want to give all your information away to the World Wide Web, but I mean, do you want to talk about anything else as far as, you know? I didn't mention, and I'm gonna put in, because again that was on a Facebook link. And I wasn't able to share it, so I'm going to download it, and I'll put it as part of this video. But you were you saved somebody's life during a fire. Also, are you able to talk about that? Or
We I was working graveyard because I love graveyard, and you know, if it's a really bad fire, dispatch will also notify the police, especially if it's an apartment complex. So it was an apartment complex on fire, and so I headed that way. And you know, we started evacuating the apartments, and someone said, "Hey, some old guy lives in that apartment." So I'm, you know, kind of screaming, yelling for him to come out, and you know, next thing I know, I see him falling down a flight of stairs. So you know, at this point, the whole top is engulfed. So I go in and try to grab him and pull him out, but I think in that video, even Sergeant Marzek says his skin was really hot and just coming off in our hands. And, you know, 3 of us ended up pulling him out. And, I mean, literally 10, 15 seconds after we get him out, he was on oxygen. The oxygen things blew up, and the whole thing went into an inferno. If we had been there at that time, it wouldn't have been good.
Well, it looked like the video, and from what I could see, I mean, you guys still got knocked, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you were.
Yeah, we got knocked over. It was I've never seen a blast like that. I knew oxygen was flammable, but I had no idea that it would actually explode the way it exploded. You know, it was almost like a military ordnance.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it looked like. I mean, it looked literally just this huge explosion, and you guys all sort of went toppling, and I was like, "Wow, I can't believe that just happened." But
yeah, and it was.
Yeah, the sergeant.
He ended up dying a few days later, but it was really cool because his son wrote us a letter, saying, hey, at least I got to say goodbye to my dad. You gave me enough time to fly into town and, say goodbye to my dad and be with my dad as he passed on. And he wrote a really good letter, and that kind of made us feel like, hey, you know what, this was all worth it. So it was pretty touching. Cool. Yeah.
I don't think, was that in the video, or I don't think you guys added that.
Yeah, it's in the very end, I think, or maybe I didn't send that video. I'll look. In one of the videos, it's at the very end where they say they received the letter from his son and all that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was. And, because we were a little discouraged when we found out he died. But then when we found out that the son wrote the letter thanking us and all that, and, it's kind of important. You want to say goodbye to your folks and all that. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of made it all worthwhile at that point.
So we had a couple of cases, and I don't even know if you know the whole premise of my podcast video cast here, the channel, but I'm trying to be pro-supportive law enforcement, and it's something that it seems to be I refer to it as the fourth estate of Northeast Ohio. The media in Northeast Ohio is very detrimental to law enforcement, and I've talked a couple of times in my podcast relative to them. There's any type of major incident with the law enforcement officer, the media essentially just pulls personnel files and anything whatsoever that's in this guy's he or guy or girl's personnel file. Look, he got written up for this, get written up for that. But anyways, so my channel is to be positive, but sometimes I guess I had someone actually email me asking me to talk about the Frank Tyson. And in my introduction, I actually misspoke. I think I said it was a shooting. It was not a shooting. The Frank Tyson incident. A lot of people are stating mirror George Floyd incident. So George Floyd happened on May 25th, 2020. The Frank Tyson incident just happened in Canton, Ohio, April 18th, 2024. And I know I sent you the video beforehand, and I'm not looking for you to sugarcoat or whatever your opinion is. But I mean, are you comfortable showing the video here and giving your opinion? I'll give my opinion. Or
yeah, sure.
All right. I have to. I'm sorry. One of these days, I have to get like a producer. I keep talking about it. So.
Well, you know more than I do with all this stuff. I have no clue about it.
So I don't. Are you able to see the video or?
Yeah. Telling a story out of Canton, Ohio now. Police, they're releasing body cam video showing the minutes leading up to the death of a man in their custody. His name was Frank Tyson. And we need to warn you tonight, the images you're about to see are disturbing. We want to pause here just for a moment to give you time for those who don't want.
Media pausing for, hey, making it more appealing to everybody. Hey, we're going to pause.
Yeah.
You don't want to see it. Leave the room. Leave the room.
Turn away or leave the room.
Guy who did this was in the VFW. He ran in there.
He ran in where?
Right now, yeah, and there's cars right there.
All right.
Yeah,
Attention all the concourse, attention all the concourses. The final boarding announcement for Dublin Flight 1734 with one-stop service to Boston. Please proceed on your lead to
Birds, you want to come with me?
For the next 2 minutes, officers make their way down the street into the bar.
Please get him out of here now.
No, we're going outside. We're going outside.
Straight to me. No, get the deal. They're on. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me.
I'm just pausing for a second because to give a little background, and I don't even know if you know, Ron. So witnesses have stated that even prior to officers arriving, this guy came into the bar basically acting erratic. That's their, the witness words, erratic. And he keeps yelling that they're trying to kill him. And none of the patrons have any idea what they're talking about. So he's obviously saying this on the body camera, and now they're trying to kill me. But you can't really be certain if he's talking about the police at this point because he was making the exact same statements prior to the police getting there. I just wanted to point that out.
Right. Okay.
Why did I kill him? They tried to kill me. They tried to kill me. You're in the sheriff's department. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff's department. They tried to kill me. They tried to kill me. They tried to kill me. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff.
Your attention, please. Change of gate assignment. JetBlue Flight 734 to Boston. Will now depart from gate B7.
Let me see if I can. Obviously, he's struggling. I was just trying to show that he's, I guess, passively resisting. We would refer to it where he may not specifically be punching or kicking at officers, but he's
definitely
not complying. Yes.
I got it. Here it goes. You want that one? Say when. You're good. Here. Knees over hand.
Your attention, please. Change of gate assignment. JetBlue Flight 616.
Now you can see on the body camera, well, probably a second ago, that the officer does have his knee on the back of his neck.
Yeah, there you go.
Calm down.
Now he is saying I can't breathe, and I did want to, again, I'll get to my opinion in a second, but and obviously I want to hear yours, but I'm sure you would probably back me up in saying when you're arresting people say the weirdest, damnedest things trying to get you to stop arresting them. I mean, your job is to take them into custody, arrest them, take them to jail, or whatever. Your job is to, basically make the person compliant. So a lot, I often bring up, it's easier to explain. I don't know how many pregnant females I arrested that were never pregnant, because as soon as you started putting handcuffs on them, I'm pregnant. So I guess I just wanted to point out, just because the guy is stating I can't breathe, I mean, it's very possible he couldn't breathe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. I mean, do you have any incidents like that you can recall?
We've had a few in custody deaths. We were always taught if he can, talk, he can breathe, but that's not always the fact. I mean, it's always the fact. If you can talk, you can breathe. But the problem is he's yelling so much, so he's not getting the air he needs. And it looks to me like he's, in excited delirium. He's very paranoid. He's got foam at the mouth, it looked like to me when you first walk in. Extremely paranoid, making statements that people are after him. But we can talk about more about that after the video if you want.
2029. Stop fighting.
I can't read.
Please change the gate assignment. JetBlue Flight 616 to New York. Will now depart from gate B8.
That's the story right there. I'll be glad I'm here. Okay.
I can't read.
You're fine. Yep.
Then, as Frank Tyson laid motionless on the ground.
So, and again, they're giving their commentary to the media, but I mean, just the second ago, you heard him. He said again, I can't breathe. The officer is fully, all officers are essentially, I think, I can't see if the person with the body camera is still on him or not, but I mean, the guy, he's no longer on his neck, and you did just hear him say, I can't breathe. So obviously, like you said, he's got oxygen, he's talking. So
right.
And I'm stopping, Ron, just so you know, because this is actually also a podcast. So not everybody is going to have access to the screen. So that's why I'm sort of narrating, just to let you know.
Oh, okay.
Ground, bar patrons can be heard talking to police.
So I thought he's here to pick up the to-go order. I've always wanted to be in a bar fight. I don't know if this counts. Yeah, talk it up, man.
It's your story.
Those conversations continued over the next several minutes. It took officers nearly 5.5 minutes from the point Tyson was motionless for them to check on him.
Did he calm down? Yeah, he might be out. Breathing?
So, and again, just sort of narrating, the subject, Tyson, is still on the ground. He's laying face down on the ground. Officers have been talking, communicating with the bystanders up to this point. And I don't have the time. I didn't honestly. I guess I probably should have paid attention to the time. Media is saying it's been 5 minutes. Officers now are trying to see, because he's been quiet for a little bit, so they're trying to make certain he's okay at this point.
It took officers another 3 minutes to realize something was seriously wrong.
Roll him over on his back.
Officers.
So again, by their timeline, I'm assuming it's correct, 5 minutes to check on him, supposedly another 3 minutes, and I did see the time on the body camera. It does appear to be 3 minutes that they roll him over. Now he's on his back, and they're starting chest compressions.
Officers can then be seen on video attempting CPR for over 7 minutes, and at times questioning where the paramedics were. You can then see the paramedics arrive at 8:47, a full 13 minutes after Tyson first went motionless.
Hey, guy, bring a BBL.
So I mean, the rest of they're trying to get life-sustaining measures is basically the rest of the video. But I wanted to get back to what you were saying, because I think that term came up with the George Floyd, specifically the excited delirium, and I 100% agree with you, because, like I said, I think it's important to note that prior to officers even being on scene, he's seems to be delusional, talking about somebody trying to kill him. So you were starting to talk about that a little bit, or?
Yeah, we started training about, or learning about, excited delirium probably about 10 years ago. And one thing that surprised me was right before I did this, I started researching a bit. I didn't know about 30% of people with excited delirium are going to die, whether they fight with police or not, just in an ambulance getting to the hospital, because it's a shock on the system. It's actually a medical emergency is what we were taught, and
and that's interesting. You said they actually taught you like 10 years ago in Vegas?
Yeah, about excited delirium. And
because I don't think in Ohio, and I mean, I could be wrong. Anybody is more than welcome to leave comments below if I'm wrong. I don't think until George Floyd came about, I don't think that there was any mention or training in Ohio whatsoever about excited delirium. So,
oh, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Now we were taught, and this is my opinion. This is where I was going in. Obviously, we have been taught, even back in the academy. We were taught that. The one thing that I'm going to have to be critical on the officers here is they're leaving them face down.
Oh,
on
absolutely.
The ground.
Yeah, they should have put him in the recovery position.
I don't know why that occurred, and like I said, this is a pro police podcast, and I hate to be horrible, but I have to be objective. I mean, I don't know why they left him on the ground. So, but it is going to be interesting. I think you bring up some valid points. It's going to be interesting to see. I think his autopsy. I think there's probably going to be some illegal substances. And again, that's just me thinking aloud at this point. But yeah. So I mean, essentially, just in my opinion, being completely objective, I'm not certain why the officers left him on his stomach like that. Even we've trained in prone asphyxiation for some time, and that's including even putting people in the back of the cruiser. A lot of times you're fighting with somebody, they don't want to get in the cruiser, and you have to basically get them in there any possible way that you can. But at some point, if they're on their stomach, you have to get in there and readjust them. I mean, it just has to happen. And so I don't know why the officers did that. Which
so
I think
did they have training on all that, or no? Do you know?
You mean these officers, or from Canton? You mean, or I don't know that they had specific training, but again, I remember us being trained even just back in the academy. I'm assuming the academy is still training it. We called it positional asphyxiation, and how to counteract positional asphyxiation. And I would assume they would have to be trained on it. I don't know specifically about these officers, but
I mean, it's sad anytime someone loses their life, you know, and it's hard on the family of the victim. It's hard on the officers. You know, no good can come out of it either way, you know, so it's a tough situation.
Yeah. So this brings us into, and I can't recall, or I don't know if you want to, or if you want to claim it. You were living around the Medina area at some point, or not Medina, Akron area at some point, correct?
Yeah, in college.
And I'm trying to figure out where all my buttons went to stop. Oh, I already stopped sharing the screen. Okay. So we have the second incident that came about, which I sort of give you a heads up today, and this is a situation with we don't know the juvenile's name because it's juvenile. They haven't released the name, but it's a incident that occurred in Akron, and I was trying to remember when I was doing this, and I probably should have done a little more research, but I think it sounds very similar to an incident that occurred not too long ago, a couple of years ago, where another replica gun was produced. Oh, it was in Cleveland. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what. Yeah,
in the park.
Yeah. So again, I'll just share the video here of the incident if I can. I think this is the video that I found.
Hey, where are you coming from? Can I see your hands real quick? Oh!
Hey, it's fake!
Shots fired! Shots fired!
It's fake! It's fake! It's fake! It's fake!
Shots fired! Drop to the ground! Drop to the ground! Drop to the ground!
It's fake!
Drop to the ground! Drop to the ground!
It's fake! It's fake! I promise.
Hands behind your back! Hands behind your back!
It's fake!
So again, I forgot. So basically, the officer arrives on scene, and I don't even know is he out of the car, Ron? Did you see if he was out of the car before he actually discharges?
It was hard to tell. It looks like he was either stepping out.
Because it reminds me very much of, and I am drawing a total blank of the shooting in Cleveland. It was very similar where the officer, it was a very brief amount of time, the officer gets out of the car and discharges in Cleveland. And again, this situation, let's see if we can see.
Where are you coming from? Can I see your hands real quick? Oh!
I think he actually shoots outside of his window. Is that?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
You coming from? Can I see your hands real quick? Oh!
Hey, it's fake!
Shots fired! Shots fired!
It's fake! It's fake! It's fake! It's fake! It's fake!
Shots fired! Drop to the ground! Drop to the ground!
So the guy, the juvenile's still standing. He's telling him to get him on. He's giving him orders to get him on the ground.
Hands behind your back.
Apparently, he was struck in the leg or somewhere. I think.
Hand, the wrist.
Yeah, you're correct. And that's at this point, he's attempting to handcuff him. He sees all the blood on the wrist.
Listen, I wanted to be safe. I just called.
Get the cuffs off.
Do I still got my pinky?
Where you hit?
My hand. You can't see it? My hand.
Get a tourniquet on this. Yes.
And they immediately basically try to start performing, EMS medical attention. They instead of obviously handcuffing him, they're taking a tourniquet now. At this point, he asks for a tourniquet.
You gotta go over there. Just,
and when I say he, I'm talking about the officer. The officer's asking the other officer to put a tourniquet on a.
You'll be all right, man. It's just in the arm.
I just wanted to be safe.
Hey, someone notify.
So essentially, the text is basically saying he was transported to the hospital for non-life-threatening emergency, and I mean, very much. What are your thoughts? I'll give you the first round this time.
I mean, why is he holding a gun when he sees a cop is the first thought. Number two is why is he even walking down the sidewalk pointing a replica gun that looks real into houses that would summons the police? You almost have to blame the parents, and like, why do they not teach their son, don't walk up to a cop with a gun in your hand or, anything like that.
And that's
It's
yeah, you're absolutely completely right. I mean, that's and it was Tamir Rice. Tamir Rice was the juvenile that was shot in Cleveland under very similar circumstances, and almost the exact same thing. You know, Tamir Rice had a replica toy gun. It looked real. This gun in Akron looks real. I don't know what you can expect the officer to do. There's been a lot of publicity out here. The media is talking about the officer having discipline in his file for use of force, and it appears he does have some discipline for use of force. But it has no, in my opinion, it has no bearing on this case. It has no bearing on this shooting. I mean, what can you expect an officer to do when he arrives on scene? He sees, he gets a call for service about a guy or someone pointing guns in houses, and he arrives on scene and he sees a guy with a gun. I mean,
right.
I don't know what else the officer could have done. And again, I think it's just more disparaging from the local media here.
Now, when you were chief, did you ever invite the media to go through simunitions training and all that kind of stuff?
I did. Not only the media, I tried to get our council involved. I tried to get several of the community activists involved. We had a very particular officer involved shooting with Sergeant McDonald, and the issue with that was his body camera. At the time we were using it was a system that was being advertised for law enforcement, but it was literally just a GoPro body camera. And what would end up happening is you know, the officer, you can't really know whether the body camera is on or not. There's just a short beep indication. And so what ended up happening with Sergeant McDonald is he gets out of the car and starts in a foot pursuit with the suspect. And he doesn't know whether or not the camera has been activated. He can't remember. He's in this pursuit seconds before. He doesn't know whether he's activated, so he hits the button. So the issue was the camera was already activated. He hits the button so that it turns it off. So again, the system really sucked. We ended up upgrading into probably one of the most state-of-the-art body camera systems that I know of. But yeah, the system was horrible. I mean, you would think to deactivate stop recording that at least you would have to like press longer or something of that nature, you know, or some sort of, you know, actual indication. But anyways, that blew up all over the media, and I think around that time is when I started offering, hey, you know, would you like to come through some simulation trainings, you know, see what's going on, what's going through these officers' heads. Tri-C, and I don't know if Tri-C was big when you were out here around or not, but Tri-C actually just came out. They have an almost full functioning shoot house now that they allow officers to go through with simulation training. But they're able to like preload all sorts of different scenarios, and officers are able to go through there and figure out what's going on. So I think that's pretty awesome. But to answer your question, not one media person took me up on my offer. So
that's a shame. That really is. You know, but it sells. It seems like they want to sell, and that's what sells. You know, going after the cops nowadays.
Well, I appreciate you taking your time. I don't know. You had Red Bull, not coffee. I saw.
Red Bull. You gonna buy me one?
I'll send you some Cash App money or Apple Pay money. Get yourself another Red Bull. but I appreciate your time, and like I said, maybe if you don't mind, every once in a while I'll bring you on, because one of the key elements of the issue of local Northeast Ohio stuff is everybody is still on the job, and they're obviously afraid to speak out, and so it's sort of convenient. You got a guy that has been fired and a guy that's been retired, such as yourself, and we can pretty much say what we want. So, so hopefully,
that does make it nice.
But have a rest of a safe trip, and like I said, I appreciate you coming on.
All right, thanks, buddy. It was good seeing you again.
All right, take care.
You too.
Hello, everyone. Just wanted to make certain I didn't have access when I was interviewing Ron relative to his rescue from the townhouse fire rescue. We had talked about it in the previous segment. Wanted to make sure everybody got to look at that. And yes, it's pretty profound, pretty horrific when you see the video here. But hopefully I can cue it up here for you guys.
Metro Police rescue a burning man from a burning building right as those flames take over that townhouse in the southwest part of the valley.
I've never heard anything like that, been so close to something. Just the concussion coming off of it was absolutely insane.
And then when we pulled up, this unit here was just fully involved. There's flames coming out of the window, flames coming out of the door.
As I was walking up, I could see the smoke coming from the top windows. Smoke was coming out of the front door. Haven't been on a fire that hot before.
I was at this door here when I saw Ron come out and start yelling to this door here and trying to grab him out. So I ran around the door to here, and right about here is where he fell down. So I tried to reach down and grab his wrists, and when I grabbed his wrists is when I slipped off because the skin was coming off of his whole body actually. And all I was really able to do was kind of get him a couple feet and spin him around.
It's like, okay, we got to fight through it. We got to get this guy out of there. So I grabbed onto his ankles, and I think Marzak had his left ankle.
Instinct kicked in to try to help the guy, because he was obviously hurting and he needed help.
And then when we pulled him to about here, I think is where we lost him because we just couldn't hold on to him anymore because of the skin coming off, and he was just so hot to the touch. That's pretty much where he ended up stopping right there and covering, just because we physically couldn't get him any further.
As we're talking, his 2 oxygen tanks explode. I'm like, well, I got to try and cover myself up and cover him up. So I just crawled over him, put myself over him, and I was just like, hey, I know this is uncomfortable. Just keep talking to me. Eventually medical got there, was able to put him on the gurney and, take him off. And then we just went back to being police officers and trying to get people evacuated and let FD do their thing. And
we reached out to UMC a couple times in the next day to check status, and he ended up surviving about 24 hours.
After everything is over, you kind of start second guessing, if we would have got here sooner, if we could have done this. And it kind of starts hitting you, like you kind of start getting a little sad and depressed that, God, I wish there was more we could have done. But then we received this letter from the gentleman's son thanking us for, hey, at least giving him that chance to say goodbye to his father. And that was one of those moments that, you just get this rush of emotion that oh my God, we did make a difference that day. Just for that kid to say goodbye to his dad meant the world to him. And that just made me feel absolutely incredible.
You don't spend the time thinking about it. And I definitely got an earful when I got home, but it is what it is. It's what you're supposed to do.
So I just wanted to come back talking with the elite retired officer from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Ron Thoma. I had forgotten that Ron was in the military also, in the Army. Military intelligence. We used to call the oxymoron. I wanted to show, because the media was talking about, they've been blasting the Akron officer all over the place, Ryan Westlake. And I wanted to point out a couple of highlighted things. Ryan Westlake honorably served his country. He was actually an MP in the U.S. Army. His certificate here is from the military police, OSAT, which is One Station Unit Training, Class 2409. And looking at his resume, he was out of the 838th. I don't think the 838th's there anymore. 838th MP unit used to be out by Austintown. I don't think it's there. But anyways, he was out at 838th. So it's important to note that, you've got a lot of officers that have done a lot of good things. The media is never going to bring those things out. The guy, he's got like a reprimand file for a small fender bender car accident. Has any of you in the family, my listeners, been in a car accident? just some of the reprimands in his file are quite humorous, and the media is just trying to portray him as some troubled individual, and it appears that he's a good officer. Looking at his evaluations, a lot of good things, good comments in his evaluations. So I find it troublesome that the Fourth Estate from the Northeast Ohio is trying to paint him anything other than appears to be an exemplary officer that was put in a bad situation, and not bad situation by his own choices. It was by the choices of a juvenile that was walking down the street carrying what appeared to be a real gun. Caused enough alarm for people to call the police, and the officer simply was just responding to that. So I know a couple of you were asking about updates relative to the Cuyahoga County cases, and actually, let me try pulling this up now here. It's like they're in a ghost town. Dockets haven't been updated for, I think, over a month now. And I don't know if they're waiting on the current indictments of Larry McDonald to come back to actually update some of the dockets or what they're doing. But, yep, so I'll share it with you here. Fresh off the presses there. Docket still showing in A. Nothing going on. But I do have some information I'll be bringing up maybe in the next episode or something at some point relative to some of the purported victims according to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office in some of these cases, and the fact of their charges. And some of the charges, much like Officer Brian Parks, some of the charges appear to have been delayed, even when the county knew or should have known. But that's for a later time. So, my Bracknell police officer friend, I think we are over the 30-minute mark. Hopefully, I was able to expound a little more, get a little more detail out. I definitely wanted to bring in a second voice, and I'm truly not looking for anybody that's a guest on the show to come in spewing anything that they don't believe to be the truth. I don't ask anybody to say anything that they don't believe in. So if anybody would like to tell a story, you're a law enforcement officer, or maybe you can't publicly say something, feel free to shoot me an email. I will try to mark the clip here, insert the email. So any stories, any ideas, any corruption from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office or any other agency interfering with lawful police officers, please feel free to shoot me an email. And that is it, folks, for episode 5. We'll see you next week.